Thank you is something that we're used to saying when we see a man or woman in uniform or a veteran in our community. But what if I told you that there are challenges that veterans face that we may not see, that we may know nothing about? And we as a community can do so much more than just say thank you. So what are these challenges that our veterans face day in and day out in our communities? And what can we do to express our gratitude to those who served us and served our nation so well? That's our topic tonight, and Darrell Owens, Director of Government Relations at America's Warrior Partnership, joins us to break down those questions and so much more. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. We all know that scene where we're in the airport, we see a man or woman in uniform, and we go and we say thank you. Maybe we buy them a cup of coffee, but we all across this country express our gratitude to our veterans, and not just around Veterans Day or Memorial Day, but day in and day out. But is there more that we can do to express our gratitude? And what are the challenges that our veterans face that we may be able to help with? Darrell Owens is Director of Government Relations at America's Warrior Partnership. He joined us last time to talk about the issue of veteran suicide and the work that he and his organization do to help prevent it. And he's here with us again tonight. Darrell, welcome back to Face the Issues. We really appreciate you being here.
Sam, thank you again for having me back. I enjoyed last time, and I'm looking forward to it again.
Yeah, really excited to have you back, Darrell. And I actually want to get started. I mean, last time we spent a lot of time talking about veteran suicide and some of the issues and challenges that veterans face and the work that your organization does. But we hinted a little bit in that conversation that there are challenges that go well beyond just the idea of suicide. That's kind of the last straw in any challenge, but there's a lot that comes up before that and a lot that veterans go through. I want to start there. I mean, you've been a veteran, you've served overseas. Can you walk us through a little bit of just what that life is like being deployed, coming back, having a family here, and then having a day job? What are some of the challenges that come up in that process that everyday Americans like myself who've never put on a uniform don't really understand or see?
Sam, that's a great question. And again, thank you for having me on today. I think there are a lot of challenges that are very unique to the military. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But the biggest one is transitions, especially for Guard and Reserve. When you're looking at coming back, when you're putting your entire life on hold, and you're going overseas someplace, you're going to training for a long time, and you're coming back and trying to jump right back into it. That's hard to do. Relationships are hard by themselves, whether it's your wife or your kids or girlfriend or your family. It's hard. It's really hard, and it's a huge sacrifice to have that time away. You're missing a lot of birthdays, holidays, missing your birthday, missing first steps. You're missing major life milestones that you'll never get back. And so those kind of sacrifices I think are what people are missing a lot. And it takes an emotional toll on somebody to not be able to be there for that. And so when they come back, it's a huge issue then transitioning back into a work environment where, I'm not out there fixing tanks every day. I've got to go back to my job as a teller at a bank. It's a much different environment. It's a much different stressors and everything. So it's a transition back for sure. But then you're going into a whole new life. Your fraternity's not there. Your banded brothers that are with you in that moment. So you don't really have that support network. People don't understand sometimes how hard it is to talk to people who are not in the military about what you went through and how to share those stories. So sometimes I think one of the biggest things we can do is listen, and I'm happy to talk more about that later.
I mean, Darrell, to your point, after I think it was the 2020 Olympics that were held in 2021 because of COVID, there was a former Olympic athlete who wrote an article to the new Olympians and said, you're probably in this weird phase where you just had the most exhilarating weeks of your life competing at the highest level, and now you're back home, you're a hometown hero, but yet you have this immense sense of sadness and depression. And he said it's exactly because there's nobody else around you that understands or has competed at that level and gets it. And now we take that to a whole nother level with service and the kinds of things that you would see in the military if you're deployed, and then coming back into a community, to your point, especially if you're in the reserves or in the Guard, coming back to a community where nobody went with you. And you're not with the brothers that served with you. You're going back to your job, in Washington or for others in their communities. Darrell, you've done this before. You've been deployed. You've come back. We always see these videos, those incredible reuniting videos, and that's just one moment. What is it like coming back, having missed so much of what was going on here? What was that transition like for you?
Well, I tell you, when that first hug from your son or daughter when they get you when you come back is always amazing, but it doesn't make up for the thousands of hugs you missed while you're gone.
Yeah,
that's always really hard to do. And I think, to be frank, one of the many issues that veterans face right now is that you're part of something so much bigger. You're part of the most powerful military in the history of the world, and now you're going back to something that's not really to anywhere near that level. Even if you've got a great job or great career and great family, you're part of something so much bigger. And that fraternity, that camaraderie is so hard to replace and replicate. And the things you do are so exhilarating, and you want to talk about to people who don't really fully understand what that is. You could talk about HIMARS and tank engagements and stuff like that, and it's kind of lost to people. Everyone's like, "Oh, that sounds fun. I don't know what that is. What's a battalion? I don't understand." And so even the language is different sometimes. But then you come back with needs that are a lot different too, especially physical needs. For the VA, we got broken knees, ankles. A lot, like we said before, TBIs and PTSD were the signature wounds of the war this time. And a lot of times it's depression too. It's feeling hopelessness because you're not at that same level anymore, and you can't talk to anybody about it. It's hard to do. It's even harder and more challenging, I think, sometimes when you're a reservist or guard and you're going right back into your civilian life right afterwards by yourself, or even when you're coming out of active duty. If you've only known active duty for a long time, you're coming out. It's a whole new world.
Yeah, we had a gentleman on, I think a year ago, Kevin Delaker. He's an Army National Guard, Air National Guard. He wrote a book called 20% Soldiers about just what he calls it guard whiplash. That you're out there fighting the enemy one day, and then by the weekend you might be back home and going to your civilian job on Monday. And it's just this very, very quick transition that leads, to your point, Darrell, to a lot of the issues that challenges that veterans face. Darrell, there's another one that I think everybody who either works for the government or has served in the military understands, and that's the challenges with the VA. Department of Veteran Affairs, again, for those of us who've worked in the government, we understand that there's things move a little slower at the VA, but veterans understand this probably better than anyone else. What is the issue with the VA, and why has it been so difficult to navigate?
Sam, that's a great question, and you hit the nail on the head. The VA has been one of the biggest solutions to some of the issues so far, and the biggest problem. They're largely always stepping in their own way. And so just to recap, this year the budget for the VA was $301 billion. It's the second largest budget on the discretionary side next to DoD. It's a mammoth organization. It's got 430,000 employees. And so when you look at the number of people they serve, that's 430,000 employees for roughly 9 million veterans who are enrolled. That's one for every 18 million or 18 veterans or so. That's one veteran employee. So the question is, with such a large bureaucracy and such a huge budget, how are the outcomes still so bad? How are there still huge wait lists? How are there still backlogs for benefits? And so I went back on the congressional record, and the same issues that we're talking about today for access to care, for backlogs for wait times, and backlogs for benefits, they're the same issues 50 years ago. They're the same issues in the 90s when Tom Ridge was a congressman asking questions of the VA committee. Those issues haven't changed, despite Congress's best efforts and throwing a lot of money and a lot of people at the problem. So something's got to change. Something's got to give.
Why, I mean, in your opinion, why are there, for example, such long wait times at the VA? I mean, we hear these horror stories of veterans that can't get care, and then they just decide they're not going back, or they're not going to go back for a follow-up because they're driving 1 or 2 hours to the clinic, and then they're sitting there for 1 or 2 hours, or they maybe sit there, they don't get called, they have to go home. I mean, why are there issues like this?
A lot of it has to do with entrenched bureaucracy and the fact that the VA does not want to evolve with how the demographic is changing in the United States. There were 24 million veterans in the United States 20 years ago. Now it's down to 17 million because a lot of the World War II and Korean era veterans are no longer around. And so that demographic is turning a lot younger now. And those veterans who are coming back, they don't want to go to the VA. They want to go see their community doctor. And so part of the issue is the VA sees it as an existential threat to their model and their system, that if people leave the VA to go get community care somewhere outside of the system, then they won't be in the VA to keep the VA going. And that's a major issue. So it starts with one, VA accountability. We got to get rid of the bad employees who are out there right now. There was a law passed in 2016. It then kind of got shut down earlier this year. Secretary McDonough said, we're not enforcing the rule anymore. And the White House essentially threw out the law, even though it's signed into law passed out both Congresses and signed out by the president. Now they're just ignoring the law. So putting that aside, that's the whole other issue. But we're not holding bad employees accountable. And when you do that, and when you have veterans who are going to ask for help every day, who need help, and they're getting either mistreated or having to wait in line for a long time, or disrespected when they get to talk to somebody, or just have their stuff canceled on them all the time, it ruins that trust that needs to be there for the veteran to go to the VA. And if you don't have that trust, that system's going to fail. So you have to have good accountability, and it's not there right now.
Darrell, let me ask you this, and just for the sake of, a lot of people who are watching this are going to say, hey, I don't understand why are veterans driving 2 hours to go to a clinic. Can you explain where you said earlier, some veterans, they don't want to go to the VA clinic, they want to go to their community doctor or their community clinic. Can you explain why veterans have to go to the VA clinic, or for what issues they're required to go to the VA clinic, how that works? Why can't they just go to a local community clinic?
So previously there were VA hospitals around the nation. In Pennsylvania, there are quite a few, and they're under what's called a VISN, one VA network that sits above it. And then underneath every hospital, there's a couple outreach clinics. Problem is, those outreach clinics only have limited services. They can see some individuals, but they don't have any kind of primary care or any kind of specialty care at those clinics. It's pretty much just in and out, making sure your blood pressure is okay. If you need a medicine prescription, got it. Anything else, you got to drive someplace to go get help at the VA care center. You got the VA centralized to make it more efficient, make it more cost effective at those locations. However, there's a big issue with that, because the VA had major wait lists, major wait time problems for veterans trying to get help at a lot of hospitals. Not all of them. There's some really good hospitals out there too. Erie had a great hospital. I know there's some up in Wilkes-Barre. Scranton had a great hospital too. But Pittsburgh and Philly both had major issues at their veterans hospitals. And then you look at 2014, the Phoenix waitlist scandal, where veterans were literally dying trying to get care at the VA. They were on waitlists, and the VA put back up all the people who were there and said, no, there's no wait list here. They had 2 sets of books. So they're cooking the books to try to show that they were okay while veterans were literally dying. So in response, Congress passed first the Choice Act, now the Mission Act, that said, okay, we're changing this. If a veteran needs help, they can request community care, and they can try to find a provider in their community. So they can drive 5 minutes to go see someone in their community, build that relationship, see that doctor every single time. And that's a big change from going to a big system hospital where you're seeing different doctors every time. You got to drive 2 hours for a specific appointment, rather than going 5 minutes to go see one primary care physician who then can refer you out to a specialist that's also 2 minutes away. So now veterans are realizing that that's out there. They're voting with their feet. A lot of the younger veterans especially are choosing community care in huge numbers. And even recently, in the past 2 years, Secretary McDonough at the VA has said, this is a problem for the VA because it's so popular. People love going to their community care providers. And why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, especially if you're going to be forced to wait or drive a distance to get care, why not go see somebody right in your community that knows you, that you can build a relationship with? Darrell,
Sam, if I can real quick too, the numbers and the wait list times right now, even in Pennsylvania nationwide at the VA to get care. So if you are a veteran in Pennsylvania right now, you're waiting 28 days on average for a primary care health appointment and 34 days for specialty care.
That's
so those are huge. It's huge wait list, and that's if your appointment doesn't get canceled. That's if your appointment doesn't get postponed to the last minute, which that they don't include those in the numbers because they reschedule and they don't talk about that. So
yeah, that's a month or more to wait for care.
So, yes, sir.
Yeah, Darrell, I appreciate you highlighting some of these issues. We're going to cut the break. When we come back, we're going to talk about solutions that everybody in the community can help contribute with. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Face the Issues is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Watch Lighthouse TV wherever you go. Available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can view our in-house studio productions on demand, or watch what's on the station right now with our 24/7 live stream. Search Lighthouse TV online on your streaming device, or go to our website for more information. Visit lighthousetv.org to stay connected. There you can find out what's currently on the air and coming up. How to watch in your area on cable, satellite, broadcast, or streaming devices. Watch past programs or our live stream. Follow us on social media and learn more about the station, our hosts, and our programming. Lighthouse TV, positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. Darrell, thank you again for joining us. Let's just pick up right where we left off. We left off talking about some of the VA issues that, to your point, add to the complexity of issues that veterans may face. And you're talking about just wait times and then potentially even having appointments canceled. And just if you need care and you can't get care, this certainly adds to a lot of the challenges. The other thing we talked about in the last segment was just the challenges of other people in the community not understanding veterans. Let's start there. One of the things that your organization talks about with solutions is that the solutions do not start and end with the veteran, that the family needs to be involved and the community needs to be involved. What are ways that, let's start with families, what are ways that families of veterans can help, understanding that they face their own challenges with the veteran being away?
Yeah, this is a hard one because the veterans' families often, if you have a service member who's deployed, that's a huge trust from the family, and many times we love working with communities to support those families when that service member is away, because they need just as much help as the veterans do. So that's a major part of it. The other part of it, to be very frank with you, is the communities taking these individuals, taking these families in, reaching out, asking how they're doing, checking in. That's huge. Just asking questions. I always tell people, I think one of the biggest things we can do as a community often is ask questions, like saying, "Hey, tell me your story. Where were you serving again? Hey, tell me how you did. What was it like? Who were you there with? Did you have a lot of best friends who served? How did it go? What parts did you enjoy the best?" Those kind of stories help veterans open up to people, because right now in our nation, like I said before, there's a warrior class. It's 1% of our nation serves. Only 4% of our nation right now has any really connection to either a veteran or service. And then on top of that, so maybe 10% of our nation has a military member or veteran in their family. That's an exceptionally small number. Yeah. The rest of Americans don't really know many veterans or service members. And that's part of the growing problem. Is so finding those individuals, when you find a veteran who's in your community, keep in touch with them. Invite them to parties, invite them over to the house to have a cocktail, invite them to have their kids to play with you too. They're good people, just like everybody else. And they're great pillars of our community too when they get involved.
So to your point, Darrell, more beyond just, hey, thank you for your service, which is wonderful, but beyond that, take the time to listen and give them that space to share their story and their experience, whether you fully understand all the acronyms or not, giving them that space to share that story. And that's just such a great way of putting it that helps them to open up. You mentioned something else, Darrell, which was that when they're deployed, the family, we call them military families for a reason, they're also struggling. If the veteran is missing his or her family, they're also missing them, and there's a struggle there. How do we come around those military families in a time of deployment, but also if there's struggle when the veteran's back, how do we come around the families to help?
Well, this is a hard question. I don't think anyone's really gotten this question right. We can be as supportive as we can, but at some point it involves outreach. It involves finding out who these families are, staying in touch with them as a community, reaching out to them, especially the kids, telling, "Hey, your dad's a great guy. Your mom's a great lady, and she's been awesome, and they're over deployed and serving our nation. I'm so proud of you." And really encouraging these kids to be part of it. That's a big part of it, because the stressors on families are huge and can't be understated on this. I think every veteran has had different issues with this at some point with their families, and whether it's moving across the country back and forth to different bases, or going overseas to a whole new environment, or just having someone be away, especially in a war zone, that's traumatic by itself.
Yeah, I've heard it put before that almost the idea of explaining to a child that their dad or their mom is so great that they're sharing them with the entire world, in the way that just like they keep them safe at home, that the United States needs them. They're so good at what they do that the country needs them to help keep all of us safe. Darrell, let me ask you this. In some communities, we see situations where the community comes around, they start showing up for a kid's baseball game because their parents deployed, or they start helping them do school runs, obviously in conjunction with the family. You're a vet. Does that help a military family, or is that something that is kind of like we feel good about it, we pat ourselves on the back, but it really isn't helpful to the family?
No, I think it's huge for the family. In my opinion, I think being there to show support for the family, especially for the kids, to show that, hey, the community's with you. We're proud of what you and your family are doing. We're proud of you for being so strong despite your parent being away. That reinforcement, that positive reinforcement cannot be understated. And a lot of times just involving them in some of those issues, or saying, hey, you know what else? Hey, your other neighbor over here, his dad's deployed too, or hey, his mom's gone. You guys should hang out and you guys can talk about things back and forth together. Making those kind of connections are really, really important.
Yeah. Darrell, I want to ask you this idea of obviously there's times when we go to the war where the veteran doesn't come back, right? And then it's somebody dies in war. Or how should a community respond in a moment like that? Yes, I know we do the funerals. I know we everybody sends flowers or whatnot, but this is not a moment in time. This is something that they're going to struggle with now going forward. How should community members come around them in not, I don't want to say a moment like that, but in a situation like that?
This is a really hard question, Sam, and I think it's a really important one too for these Gold Star families, the folks who have lost loved ones overseas in combat. Showing that the community is there, that they're not just going to be there right at the beginning, right when all the events happen, but for the long term, that they're going to be supportive, that you have friends there that you can reach out to and support, that you're still going to have your kids together in baseball, and you're still going to have your Wednesday night evenings together. That life goes on. And you have to keep them in mind, remember them, and memorialize them. And a lot of communities, I think, have done a lot of really unique things, whether it's memorials, whether it's a fundraising golf tournament or something, or scholarship opportunities for kids, or even fundraising for their family to help put them through college or help pay expenses. Those kind of small events every year, and showing support long term, not just short term, long term. Those are I think where the secret sauce is on that.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you pointing that out, that long-term commitment. It's not just a kind of a flash in the pan, one-time thing, but to be in there for the long run is just so important. Darrell, I mean, you served. If you could say something to people in the community, what would it be?
Keep listening and ask questions. There are a lot more veterans in your community than you know. They're everywhere. They're pillars of your community. They're serving on council. They're volunteering to clean the parks. They're at everyone knows the VFW and the Legion, who are in a lot of the small towns. But there are a lot of other veterans who aren't part of those organizations, especially the younger generation, who are there at baseball games every day and everything else. Talk to them. I mean, especially if you're not friends with them or don't know much about them, reach out. A lot of times that they don't know, they don't feel comfortable talking to other people when they get back. It's good to just reach out and just be friendly. Invite them over to come hang out and play pool at your house or something. It's a great way to get to know people. Listen to the stories. Every veteran has a story. I think it's just important we listen.
I think that's great advice. Every veteran has a story, and it's important that we listen. Darrell, thank you so much for joining us. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Watch Lighthouse TV wherever you go. Available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can view our in-house studio productions on demand, or watch what's on the station right now with our 24/7 live stream. Search Lighthouse TV online on your streaming device, or go to our website for more information. Visit lighthousetv.org to stay connected. There you can find out what's currently on the air and coming up, how to watch in your area on cable, satellite, broadcast, or streaming devices. Watch past programs or our live stream. Follow us on social media and learn more about the station, our hosts, and our programming. Lighthouse TV, positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. Darrell, we talked about these issues. Obviously, you work on these issues with America's Warrior Partnership. But the other reason we talk about these issues with you is because you are a veteran. You served, you've been deployed, you're a member of the Army Reserves. I want to ask you your why. Why put on that uniform? What led you to make that decision that you wanted to wear the uniform and serve this country?
Thank you, Sam. I grew up in a small town in Watford, Pennsylvania, up in Erie County. And I grew up, I had a big family, but my father, my grandfather set great examples for me and how to be part of a community, how to do something bigger than yourself. They were involved in the local state association of boroughs. My grandfather was borough council secretary for 45 years. My dad was on the borough for 20 years, both at zoning, and they volunteered all the time. They gave back to the community. And I loved that. It was a great example for me. But I wanted to get out of my small town. When I graduated from Fort Lauderdale High School, I wanted to go to New York and make money, be a Wall Street broker, be really successful. And then 9/11 happened. I was in high school, a senior year of high school. I was the first graduating class after 9/11, and that changed my entire career trajectory from there. I knew I had a great mentor and example that my family set for me. And I realized at that point that I needed to put my nation above myself for everything. And I wanted to dedicate myself to public service. A lot of my graduating class that year in high school also went and served immediately. Wow. They joined up for the military, went overseas to serve. And ever since then, that was my career trajectory. I joined the military. I worked in Congress down here for my state and for my community, and it was a great honor to do so. And ever since then, I've been dedicated to putting my nation before myself.
Yeah, you said a lot of your high school class joined the military after 9/11. I mean, that was something we saw around the world, around the country. A lot of young men and women watching that and saying, I need to step up and do my part in service to my country. Right. Darrell, there is a lot of questions, young people today going, do I join the military? Sometimes it's a political thing. They don't like the commander in chief, or they think X, Y, Z about the military. Others, there's not that swell of patriotism that we saw after September 11th. What do you say to somebody who's kind of debating, do I join the military or not? What's your pitch to them?
I would say it's a challenge. It's a lot, and it'll take a lot of sacrifice, and it's daunting at times, but it is worth it. It is rewarding. It is serving your nation. It's putting something bigger than yourself out there. And I think it's important to have that moment where you realize that you're part of something bigger. And it was one of the best decisions I've made, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
So no regrets. That was my next question. No regrets from you for signing up after high school and joining the military?
I didn't sign up immediately after high school. I went to college first and then joined after. But yeah, I don't regret a moment of it. I've enjoyed my Army experience. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of sacrifice, and it's been hard. I'll be very, very honest with you. It's been hard, but it's been very rewarding for me, and I've enjoyed it every moment of it so far.
Yeah. Well, Darrell, we thank you for your service, and thank you for sharing with us just the way that our communities across this country can get involved in serving our veterans who've given so much for us.
Sam, thank you. And there are so many great communities across Pennsylvania, Waterford, Erie, even down into Butler. They're very patriotic and they love America, and just keep listening to our veterans. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Darrell. That is our show for tonight. Again, I want to thank Darrell Owens of America's Warrior Partnership for joining us. And I want to thank each of you for tuning in. We hope to see you again right back here next week. Until then, my name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.